Welcome to Marketing MASH, brought to you by themarketingscope.com.
Welcome to the Marketing MASH. I'm Eric Vidal with the Marketing Scope. Today we have Robert Levin, CEO of RSL Media out in New York. Welcome, Robert.
Thanks for having me. Really looking forward to my first Blab session.
Yeah, well, welcome. So, we're going to talk content marketing, content creation, but the angle here is why and how to act like a media company and why you should. So why should you act like a media company if you're a brand?
So first of all, I believe, and I'm not the first to come up with this. I'm a big Joe Polizzi fan over at the Content Marketing Institute. So, if you think about it, let's look at what's going on in the world today. So number one, what do media companies have with their audience? They have trust. And what is the biggest currency you need today to sell something, particularly in the B2B world, which is where we focus? But even in the B2C world, I mean, the essence of a brand is the trust that brand conveys. So media companies have what brands want, right? Now, let's put that aside for a second. Let's look at what else has changed, let's say, in the past 10 or 20 years. And by the way, there's a great book on this topic called The Age of the Customer by a guy named Jim Blasingame, highly recommended. He's the one who really got me started to think about this. Buying has changed, and it continues to change, and it's going to continue to change probably for the next 5 or 10 years. So if you go back 20 years ago, for sure, the buying process was really controlled by the seller, right? The decision was always the buyers, but the seller controlled something that it no longer controls today, which is product information. These days, of course, thanks to the web, all the product information is out there. So before somebody's looking to buy, before they even contact you, they're already checking stuff out on the web. They're checking information about products, best practices, how to use products, what do you need to know about products, all of those different things, right? So that's where content comes in. Of course, content marketing, we all know it's working these days and it's working well. So again, you think about this, media companies produce content, they have the trust. So this is really why you need to think and act like a media company these days, because the media companies have what the brands want, everything except for the profits part, of course. So now considering this, what else does this mean? This means that you're also competing with the media companies for mindshare.
Yeah.
Which also means that, with everybody's a publisher today. With you can have a blog running in 10 minutes. It means that your content can't just be good anymore. It really has to be terrific, which is what media companies do.
Well, let's share some examples, and please, the audience can share some as well by chatting some in, but share some examples of some brands that are acting like a media company and are doing it well.
Right. So I'll start out with, a shameless plug. We'll talk about one of our clients, Time Warner Cable Business Class. So we have been producing this for them, right? There we go. Solve Magazine. You can find it at solvemagazine.com. By the way, if you notice, we produced this for Time Warner Cable, and if you look at the cover, there's no mention of Time Warner Cable on the cover. There's an ad on the back and stuff, but you don't see anything about that there. We're now in the third year of doing this for them. And this is a company that clearly understands the power of content. This is a magazine that goes to well over 100,000 of their mid-market customers and prospects, where the CEOs, the CIOs can read about things that aren't necessarily related to Time Warner Cable products, business class products and services. Although there is some information about that, but we're really engaging them with things like how to find the perfect hire and cybersecurity. HR goes high tech, all of these different things. First, you engage them, and then you're really earning the right to deliver marketing messages. And it's been a home run for them. I mean, the print run for this has gone up well over 50%. I just got an email the other day that they got one client that they mentioned to us from the magazine, where a salesperson said this was a way that they engaged the client. That paid for the entire print run, the entire costs and investment around producing the magazine.
So they made their money back just on that one client just on that one client.
And of course, there's plenty more.
Yeah.
And by the way, what's interesting, notice the format, right? This is not digital.
Yeah, it's print.
Which is also interesting because the reason they went to print is they wanted to break through the clutter, and everybody's inbox on their email is jammed. Yet, the good old mailbox is a little lonely these days.
It is people are able to cut through and get to me when they send me snail mail or traditional mail because I get so few of it. So,
and if it's handwritten, what if it's handwritten? You open that first, right?
Even more so. So one of the questions from the audience is, for that magazine, that example, do they have a digital version as well?
Yeah, solvemagazine.com. You can check out all the I think every issue since inception.
I mean, I can go down a whole list and jump in here, but there's quite a few brands I know that do a good job. With acting like a media company, and one space alone, I think that's very good at it. And I'm not going to name them all, but the marketing automation space, or email marketing and marketing automation space. I know Constant Contact has been a client of yours, but Marketo and HubSpot and some of these companies, they do a good job. Acton, they did a good job early on when they weren't that big even, and they leveraged content creators from the outside, but they also just created their own little media group, if you will, and they had an editor and a writer, and they were cranking out content every day. And I like to use them as an example because they weren't a big company. They still aren't a big company. They're not a public company, but they do a good job. The other one, which is a beast, which is interesting, and maybe not a lot of people know this, but Adobe. You go to CMO.com.
CMO.com, absolutely. Yeah. That's a brilliant example of creating a platform that, much like the example I just showed, separate from the brand, right? And yet, many CMOs that I speak with read it. It's great. And of course, you have the Adobe messaging around it. Two other smaller companies that where I really like their content, we're not involved with those, so I'll stop the plugs. Booker. I don't know if you've seen Booker. They have software for small businesses. And also Zapier, which is a really cool company. They have I guess these APIs that connect with all these different apps so that you can automate a lot of processes. Both of those companies, I think, do a fantastic job with content. In fact, certainly with Zapier, that's what kind of sucked me in to the company was reading some of their content. I'm kind of addicted to it, just like I read the Wall Street Journal every day. Yeah.
We got Janet mentions Taste Magazine does a great job too. Thanks for sharing that, Janet. My co-host, Shelly Kramer, who's not here today, she's the CEO of V3B, the ad agency, and they've been doing it for quite some time. And act like a media company. So much that they ended up partnering and acquiring or merging with a media company not too long ago. A couple of them. So
I just had a conversation with a guy I know here who's got I won't say who it is because he hasn't made this acquisition yet, who's got a small marketing agency here in New York. And he told me he's about to buy a website. And he wanted to pick my brain. What does he need to know about, buying a media company? But it's a no-brainer, I think. Everybody, whether you have a dedicated site or it's a blog on your site, whatever it is. By the way, content can be events, they can be webinars, all of these different things. And then when it's the right time on this chat, I'm happy to talk about how you can act like a media company now that we've established why.
Well, so why should your focus be on platforms and not one-offs? I know you've said that before. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah. So a lot of companies, we get calls from companies, and we've done some of this. We try to stay away from it. We get calls from companies saying, we've seen the work that you do. You really understand the small business market. We want an article on this. Well, okay, how are you going to use it? Well, we just want that topic. So they're gonna keep posting the blogs up, but when you're building a platform like a Solve magazine, like a CMO.com, whether you buy it or build it, doesn't really matter. When you have a platform, you're building an asset that appreciates over time, right? So again, going back to Solve magazine, when we did the first few issues, I'm sure people, including salespeople, didn't really know what it was. But now, what's interesting now, several things are happening, right? Number one, people are requesting more copies. Again, we're in our third year, so it's a platform. It's building up brand value, if you will. And the more it does that, the more people that are reading that, of course, the more people that are hearing and reading about the Time Warner Cable business class message. So you have that going on. We're getting more people both inside the company as well as people who see the magazine that want to be featured in the magazine, which is a nice problem to have as well. And we're getting more success stories. So platforms appreciate over time because you're building brand equity in something versus one-offs where, you have that one piece of content. Yeah, there's a little bit of long tail, but you're not getting anything that's sustaining. Again, it goes back to acting like a media company.
Yeah, no, you're preaching to the choir, but it's tough out there because I know some companies today. I worked for one a while back, a few years back, where I couldn't get sign off to create content, to pay someone to help create content out there, except maybe, 2 or 3 projects, the beginning of a big launch for a new product launch or something like that. But I'd have to wait another 8 months, or we'd have to do it all internally and not have a dedicated person for it, but have to be split up amongst the team. And that's tough when you don't dedicate a strategy, a plan, or as you say, a platform, and have 1-2 people internally just focused on that, and have the outside contractors as well, or the funds to actually leverage people from the outside. Because I know a lot of companies still, they're ham and egging it.
It's very reactive. It's
reactive. They'll go weeks without creating anything, and there's no, and then all of a sudden they're creating 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 pieces, and then they're going weeks or months without. It's just, it's not predictive. It doesn't scale well. There's 100.
You said the key word there, which is strategy. When you set, this is, look, a media company, and we used to be a media company that served the New York area small and mid-sized business market. So this is how we got started really in content marketing before it was even called content marketing.
Yeah.
What does a media company do? A media company sets an editorial calendar. That's part of the strategy. Now, for a brand, it's not only a calendar, but it's really thinking things through. What do we want to accomplish? Are we focusing on the top of the funnel, the middle of the funnel, even the bottom of the funnel?
Yeah.
How do we create a series of assets that help people get through there based on persona or stage in the buying cycle? The value is so much better. The return on investment is so much better when you have that strategy in place. And again, that's kind of what a media company does. But the other thing a media company always does, and this is sometimes tough for brands, sometimes even particularly for product managers, is they start by listening to the biggest radio station in the world, which is WII-FM. Anybody know what it stands for? Quick. Nobody? All right. What's in it for me? So, this is the toughest thing when we're sitting down with a brand is first you got to come up with content, develop really, really good, terrific content that gives the reader, in your case, the buyer or the customer, if you're doing some life cycle work, what they want. You start there. And again, media companies do this, right? So that's by far the biggest thing you have to do is you have to change your focus from the product to what's in it for the reader.
Yeah. So I assume that you come across companies or maybe individuals inside a company that think that this is a magic bullet or a silver bullet where you know what, look, we can create a couple pieces and it's going to cut through and it's going to change everything.
Yeah.
Or 70% of the way through the article or the piece of content, they're starting to sell and mention product and have a little starburst or something with arrows this way.
Yeah. As one of the members on my team said, when we do PowerPoints, we don't do those starburst things. That's what marketers do. As editors and as media professionals and writers, we present it like a media company would. And we always, I'm actually excited because some of our newer clients, now that we're kicking off projects, they get this. And that's good. Whereas I think a couple of years ago, maybe they wouldn't. Maybe it's from reading our blog, but chances are it's just from really understanding what's working for everybody else, which is, we have a message we want to deliver, but there's a time and place for everything.
Yeah.
Right? You give that information way too early in the funnel and you're turning somebody off. First engage them, then you earn the right to give them some marketing communications, if you will.
Yeah. And don't, my Starburst story here, Robert, and don't try this. Don't be a smart Alec like I was in the late 90s and I had to develop a piece of content. I had to run it by the VP of sales, and I put a starburst on it jokingly on one of my examples. There's 3 I was showing him, and just trying to be a smart ass because I know his team would like it. And well, they thought it was funny, but he didn't think it was funny. He loved it and said, "That's the one I want to go with." And I sat there going,
well, look, we can all forgive ourselves for some of the stuff we did in the 90s, right?
Yes.
Like buying stock in pets.com and stuff.
Okay, so segue now. So we talked about acting like a media company. What are some things that marketers can do that's not acting like a media company that can still help them with their content marketing?
That's not acting like a media company. So that's a fantastic.
Or what's some things I need to do that aren't acting like a media company?
So we talked about the important things. What's in it for you and platforms. The other thing you got to start to think about, as I started to allude to before, is think about the buyer's journey, right? And what do you want to accomplish? Do you want to accomplish getting people into the top of the funnel? Do you want to accomplish getting people through the middle of the funnel? So when you're at the top of the funnel, and we have some blogs on this on our site at rslmedia.com. When you're at the top of the funnel, you can be a little bit more general with the content, right? It doesn't have to necessarily be related to a product.
Yeah.
You want to engage people. It should have some alignment with the product, but if you have the budget, you can actually go beyond the product. As you saw, we help Time Warner Cable with Solve Magazine. They do a fantastic job with that. As you get into the middle of funnel, and again, you can do this by persona. As you get into the middle of the funnel, you want to start to think about what are the things that people are looking for when they're in that middle of funnel stage, right? Are they looking for more information related to the features of your product? By the way, that's a great place for people to start. Take a look at your product, take a look at the benefits, and then the features. And take the features and find the intersection of the features and the things that your prospects are interested in. That is a great opportunity for content because it's aligned with your product and it's related to what they're looking for. Another thing you can do is look at go talk to your salespeople for a little bit. I guarantee you when you ask them about objections, 5 are going to come up like 80% of the time, right? And by the way, the salespeople should have canned responses for those 5. Those responses become a great basis for content that you should be producing, right?
For middle and bottom of the funnel, right?
For the middle and the bottom, because they have those objections, whether they state them or not, they're in the back of their mind. And if you can tackle those through content before actually you hear it, or you may never hear it, or your salesperson never hears it, then you're actually moving them through the funnel. So you can actually use content to accelerate the buyer's journey that way.
So what are some pieces of advice you could give either a small marketing department or a marketing department that maybe traditionally hasn't created yet a content marketing full-on strategy, a team, and they have this regular calendar and they act like a media company? What can you recommend to them to get started? I mean, obviously, they could hire a firm like yours, a company like yours, but what are some of the things that they could do?
The first thing you should figure out is what do you want to accomplish with your content. Also, by the way, you have to have just a mental adjustment, knowing that this is not a campaign. This is not something where you're going to do something for 3 months and you're going to have results. You might, but if you think about this in the long term, and it doesn't have to you could spend millions of dollars on it, of course, but it doesn't have to get very expensive. Yeah. You got to really adjust your mindset that, okay, we're doing this for the long haul. I mean, it's like anybody else when they're starting a blog, right? You're getting one person reading, 2 people reading, and it builds and builds and builds over time. Obviously, you want to make a commitment to focusing on great content. And by the way, speaking of that, everybody has a built-in source of content that, if you ask me, is one of the best sources of content you'll ever have. What is it? Your current customers. What an unbelievable source of content. There's a few reasons for this. Number one, there's so many options here. You can talk about how they're using the product, but don't do it in a sales sort of way. This is really important when you're selling to small and mid-sized businesses that are less interested in the technical specs of your product but they want to see how other companies are using your product or service. It's a great way to do it. You can just do a profile, by the way, of your customers. You don't even have to get into the fact that they're using the product. So what happens? It's content that your prospects will love, and your current customers who are featured get all excited. And what do? They start telling their friends, right? So they start doing the sharing for you. It's by far the best place probably for most companies to get started. And you know what? You can do this so easily. You can start a program where you can just even start with an email some of your customers 5 questions.
Yeah.
And ask them for permission, of course, to reprint the answers. How easy is that? Doesn't take much. Now, for the bigger companies, sorry, I'll just finish up.
No, go ahead.
For the bigger companies, what we're speaking with our clients about is we find that some of them have trouble consistently getting customers who want to be featured. And it's not that the customers don't want to be featured. It's just it takes time.
It's our corporate team. It's the corporate com team that holds them up usually, right?
That's right. So we're talking to some of them about having somebody having that responsibility of finding them and getting them interested in this. And then whether they do it themselves or they turn them over to us doesn't really matter. But unbelievable place to start. I mean, everybody wants to read about success stories or a best practice of how somebody tackles something. And this is a great way to do it.
You know what? That's great, Robert. I'm glad you gave that example because that's one thing, our company, we need to do a little better. And I'm going to try to weave that in. I mean, I go back to WebEx. I did that day one when I started at WebEx. I asked somebody, can you give me a list of, our top customers for this product? Even if it's just a list of 10. And so they gave me a list. There was maybe 15.
Right.
And I just reached out to them via email and phone calls and introduce myself. I'm the new product marketing manager or person in charge of the product marketing. And so it was very soft. I just wanted to introduce myself. I wanted to hear their story, what's working, what's not. And then I circled back with people that had challenges and try to fix them. And so I built that relationship. But during that time, I was hearing their story. I was understanding it. For me, so I could better communicate to executives, but I can also then start creating content around it. And it just, not all of them, but like 3 or 4 turned into case studies right away. And then a year and a half later, when we decided to integrate the customer stories into our ad campaigns, who did I go to? I went to those first 15 and we got some big brands. Of course, we had to deal with the corporate comm stuff, but there were some big brands in there. It was pretty, and it was all because it was reaching out, though. I wasn't selling them anything. I was just introducing myself. What can I do to help? Maybe that's another tip that we can share with others. Absolutely. I mean, you build trust by not asking for a sale, right? Not asking for anything, but you being helpful. Reciprocity is a big thing. It's a huge opportunity for any small business, large business. It's a great way to get started. Well, great, Robert. Thank you so much for sharing some of the best practices. We got Robert Levin, helping brands act like an agency or act like a media company. Excuse me. Don't act like an agency. Yeah. Act like a media company. Act like a media company. Thank you so much, Robert. I appreciate your time. Thanks for having me.
That's it for this episode of Marketing Mash. You can share your thoughts by following us on Twitter and Facebook. Subscribe to our podcast to keep up with the show. And of course, you can always find us by visiting themarketingscope.com.